And we shall
Yeah.
now go on to our last speaker, Dr. SACHIN MAHULI, consultant vitreoretina from Vision Multispecialty Hospital. And he is going to talk on advantages of interface vitrectomy with under silicone oil. On to you, Dr. Sachin.
Thank you so much, madam. I'm really glad that I got this opportunity to speak. Thank you, Chitra, madam, and Srinivas for giving me this opportunity. Am I audible? There's some music
Yes.
going on in the background. I'm traveling, so kindly excuse. But I'm unable to share the screen. Can they?
Yes, Dr. Anand, can you share?
Sure, ma'am. Give me a minute.
Yes, sure.
Chitra madam, we are well before time.
Yeah, that's because of the brilliance of our speakers and our expert panel.
Exactly. The retinal surgeons, basically retinal surgeons.
I'm pushing Mr. Anand continuously behind.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I'm getting reminders if I forget. So I'm starting the video. Just give me a second.
Yeah. This was a case referred to me by one of my colleague who was attempting a vitrectomy for this case, and he said there was so much of intraocular bleed during surgery because he could not complete the membrane dissection, and at the end of the surgery he thought he could finish the vitrectomy, but he was not sure. There's so much of bleeding, and he put oil and left it out like that. So when I saw there was a lot of vitreous, and since he had told there was too much of bleeding, I thought I'll attempt. I could have done it with the oil removal and then do a vitrectomy again, but then I thought let me attempt it with the oil inside. I was not sure how the cutter is going to perform because we have done retinectomies and all with the cutter under oil, but how would the vitreous be cut under the oil? That was a major challenge. So I thought let me try vitrectomy under the oil. So I fixed an oil infusion and started doing vitrectomy. And the oil infusion was the oil was injected slowly as per my advice by my assistant. So there was a partial PVD which we could identify. Somehow the posterior pole was clear of all the vitreous. There was no vitreous in the posterior pole, but this peripheral, as you can see, this surgery I had taken up after 1 month following the surgery, what he had done already. So luckily the disc was healthy, and it was quite a bit of challenge to dissect these attachments, vascular attachments and membranes and vitreous. But luckily the cutter started performing very well, and I could do a very good vitrectomy, and retina was falling back as soon as I started releasing it from the retina. You can see the break also there under the vitreous in this case, wherein I sort of try to trim all the vitreous around that break, and ultimately finished the vitrectomy completely. You can see the retina falling back very beautifully as soon as I start peeling the vitreous from the retina along with those membranes. So the performance of the cutter was quite good. The bleeding also was not that much because the oil was probably holding back most of these membranes, and the vascular nails which I had to dissect was dissected ultimately, and we could sort of complete the whole surgery. See, this is the area where there was a very strong adhesions near the arcade, and there were tight membranes. Probably this was the area where there was a large break under the vitreous, and the bleeding was maximum at this area when he was doing the surgery in the first go. So this is the last bit of vitreous which I'm cutting, and the last part of vitreous was cut, and PVD was induced in that area. All the vascular nails were dissected, and some preretinal membranes which were there were trimmed and left off. So subretinal fluid, I cauterized all the breaks. I cauterized all the breaks, and I could drain the subretinal fluid. I cleared all the preretinal hemorrhages, and finally I could laser all the breaks, and the case did well, quite well. And post-operatively, the patient did get around 6/18 vision, and we are planning. Right now the retina is quite stable, and we are planning to remove the oil in some few days' time. So this was a different type of case which I had done. So I thought I'll present and share your opinion and expertise on this. Thank you so much.
Wonderful case presentation, Dr. Sachin. Can we hear from Dr. Manish Thapar?
Yeah, so interesting case, the way you dealt with. So I have two things. One is that the person who referred to you during the surgery, as you said, probably faced some bleeding and had to leave it halfway, but he chose to put oil. One is that a simple solution would be to just put PFCL and leave it. It may be much better to take it up later. So that is one aspect, of course. I just wanted to share that such a situation is better with PFCL inside. And the second is that I've done many times under oil, but those are cases where it's more like a macular pucker or a fresh detachment inferior fluid after a month of surgery, which is reaching macula, where there's no aggressive PVR, no major peeling or stuff to be done. So in this case, I personally would have removed oil and done it. It would have made job much easier. Put some PFCL, removed everything. There was a lot of blood still there at the end of surgery, inferior to the arcade, which is very difficult to aspirate with oil, I think, inside. So from all that standpoint, this particular situation, I would remove oil. So I'm curious why you chose to use oil as well.
But Manish sir, another interesting thing in this case was even I would have preferred to remove oil and did it. But the moment you are removing those membranes, the retina was snapping down.
Yeah, I know.
So
I mean,
that
it
probably,
worked
that
out well.
probably would have given him that temptation to finish it off, and he didn't have to do anything. The retina was falling on by itself. That probably that was helping him to do the dissection, because in the detached retina, the more we try to do it, unless we go bimanual, it tends to. So probably the oil was giving the counter traction in this case, and the vitreous was neatly getting separated. Very interestingly, I have never come across such.
The PVD, I think the PVD, because of maybe the hemorrhagic episode, other things, the PVD had very well kind of the adhesion had gone. So everything he was lifting was letting go of the retina very easily. That was true. Yeah.
I think personally, what I think is you can always try your maneuvers with the oil, and if you feel you can't do it with justice, you can always remove the oil. But at least you got the benefit of checking if you could do with the oil. I always try with the oil if visualization is good enough, and then you can always remove the oil. But you can't do it the other way around. Then you can't get that again.
The other thing I do many times is like a sandwich thing where there is oil and I'm looking at traction. So I inject PFCL under the oil. There's always a space, a thin space, and it can create a very nice taut globe also. Sometimes a nice, you put it enough so that the tone is not too high, but enough for you to work on, because oil never gives you that pressure. Otherwise, if you increase it too much, it will create visibility issues. So I put PFCL, which helps flatten the macula and helps you treat membranes well. So that's another thing one could do with if you're working with oil. And I put the infusion on air so that the fluid doesn't come in, but it just takes care of any hypotony, and the air doesn't cause any emulsification issues, because obviously you want to keep the oil inside post-surgery. So you don't want infusion fluid to come in. So I put infusion on air in these cases, and at the end top it up, top residual oil which is required. That's how I do cases under oil.
But I know very interesting. My observation is very interesting. I think you had a break in that area in which we are dissecting, and the oil was keeping the retina back. Right?
Yeah. That was the
very surprising. We have never tried it out for diabetic TRDs, but I think this is a very nice technique to show us.
Any idea what oil this was? Like what centistroke?
It was 1000 centistroke oil. 1000 centistroke PDA.
Sometimes if you remove oil, the RD becomes bullous and that more unmanageable. Better to try first, and if you can't, then you can always remove the oil.
But very interesting, Appa. Very interesting to show this, I think. Yeah.
One question to Dr. Sachin: what settings you used? What I feel is whenever we go with the cutter in a silicone filled eye, there are always the formation of air bubbles inside, and that decreases your visibility. So this long surgery without the air bubbles inside, what were your settings in the vitrectomy machine?
No, I was cutting it at 3500 cut rate because I saw the vitreous being very thick there, and 3,500 cut in aspiration of around 350.
Dr. Sachin, any hypotony during the surgery because of
Sorry?
the leakage of the any hypotony because of during the surgery
No,
because of
no, there was no hypotony during surgery also, because I was telling my assistant to inject the oil as and when required, because we can get sense of that feeling of hypotony during. I was asking her to inject this thing. Hardly 3 ml of oil was used in the whole surgery. 3 to 4 ml of oil was used.
Is there any fear of at that time when you have created one hole, that you have created one hole on the temporal side and you have continued the doing of the membrane dissection, rest of the inferior side, that by pulling the membranes you will lead to the subretinal migration of the oil?
No, there was no migration. That is very surprising even for me, because the hole was quite small. Probably the oil did not migrate subretinally, because it can migrate if it's a large break. And there was a constant pressure of the oil coming from the injection. Even I felt it surprising, because it did not go migrate very well. Retina was falling back instead. Probably there was a partial PVD and a fluid there which helped me during the surgery.
Good. Any other last comments?
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead, sir.
So I'm sure everyone is going to oppose what I'm going to say now. I personally feel it is not possible to do vitrectomy under oil if the oil is there at the cutter tip. Whatever cutting has been done in fluid. That is because the oil has floated up and there was a small meniscus of fluid underneath the oil bubble. Like Dr. Manish said, I restrict my under oil surgeries to puckers and for top-ups. Otherwise, I don't really feel that we can do a proper vitrectomy with oil in place. And if Sachin has succeeded, it is because he has worked under fluid and not under oil. I mean, this is something which everyone is going to oppose from the discussion that has already happened. I'm sure everyone will disagree.
There was a fluid initially, sir, but later on, because this went on for a time, this was edited video, because oil was continuously getting injected. There was not enough fluid to complete the vitrectomy. It was under oil later on, which was cutting. Initially, yes, during PVD induction, there was a fluid. When I started introducing peripheral PVD, there was a fluid trapped between this and this thing. But
either way, literally he was under oil.
Okay, yeah. Literally when I do under oil surgery, I connect my infusion to an oil pump, meaning I connect my infusion to the oil syringe and keep pressing it as and when I need to replenish the eyeball volume and get the fluid out of the eye from time to time, so that I can keep a big bubble of oil all the time. And that is my under oil surgery, in contrast to what Dr. Sachin has done.
So after this, I've done a couple of cases under the oil, wherein I've done RRs and revitrectomies, which again retina behaved quite well.
I'll have to try it now. Thanks, Sachin, for the idea anyway.
So I think it's been a great evening, and I'm sure all of us have to agree on this point that it has been such an interesting collection of cases and such wonderfully discussed beyond what Srinivas had actually dreamt that this webinar would turn out to be. It really was amazing, because each of you contributed so phenomenally to this meeting, and thanks a lot. My special thanks to my co-moderator, Srinivas Joshi, who really planned this webinar from the basic to the end. Normally, I have this habit of being constantly connected, but this time I felt he left alone, he couldn't have done better than what he did. So great future for you, Srinivas. You are doing great guns. And of course, I owe my thanks to my ARC team for always being there in the background for me. My thanks are due to Dr. Anand Sethi, and I'm sure all of you all are seeing how so closely he is connected with it. And if not for him, the timing would have gone crazy. And of course, I owe my thanks to Malika too for keeping a very strict watch. I think women are all about perfections. No, Malika? I think I'm getting to be a feminist now. I owe my thanks to Srinivas, to Sai and Manjula from Numerotech for always being so prompt in sending those mailers. And I do hope that brings in more and more audience. My thanks to Entod for being a constant sponsors in every single ARC webinar. Of course, the Sun Farmers have come forward for their PG update. So I really owe my thanks. If ARC stands tall, it's because of the sponsorship from Entod. And of course, thanks to all the speakers, all the expert panel, and my very, very special thanks to the attendees who keep coming and attending in good numbers and watch later on. Believe me, friends, you should see the attendance which picks up over the period of time when they watch on the YouTube and the Facebook, and that eggs us on to do better and better. Thank you one and all, and we'll all be getting together, I'm sure, during my term in ARC. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chitra Madam. I think we should congratulate Dr. Chitra Ramurthy, who was behind me all the time, morning, afternoon, evening, night. Srinivas, where is the thing? Where is the thing? Because of our constant this thing, I think we should we could get a better program. And thanks to the expert panelists, you have done a wonderful job. And each of you gave a kind of pearls, not a physical pearl, but a pearl in a virtual way. So thank you everyone for that, and excellent presentation, variety of cases. Really, hats off to everyone.
Thank you all the present.
Yes.
Chitra for staying even in specialities that are not her own. It's very difficult to sit through. And because of her presence, there is some kind of, a pressure to continue to perform at the highest level. I feel that when the chief goes away, there is some amount of slackening, which she doesn't allow, but continuously present. Excellent.
Madam, you believe me or not, she wants to reappear for the exam and score a gold medal now, because she has attended all the specialties possible now. If
Now
given
I
an
don't know
exam,
if
she will
will
write
start
it today itself.
She will become a retina consultant next.
Next birth, maybe, yeah. It will become a brooding desire.